back. We're visiting today again with Rob Roy, who's the Chief Investment Officer and co-leader of Environmental and Sustainability for Advent Health. And we've been talking about all the wonderful things they're doing and the mission of Advent Health. One of the things that, and we met in August and talked a little bit about some of the energy roadmaps and such that we do. And one of the things that we talked about with our customers is when we're helping them develop their baseline. And we also help them to identify peer and aspirant groups that they want to prepare themselves against. And, with those peer groups, they find out so much that they can do, but with those aspirant groups, they find out what they need to aspire to do. Have you and Advent Health gone through this type of exercise? And who would you consider your peer and aspirant groups? And what are you trying to emulate from other major hospital facilities or airports or whatever else it may be?
Yeah, we haven't done that exercise in a formal way, but because we've been building our network of peers in this space, we see different approaches to this work. There are those within the healthcare space like Kaiser, who've been at this work for a long time, especially on the energy side. They've done a lot around renewable energy. Given that they're based in California, they probably had a little more drive earlier on to get there. And I think the work that they've done is inspiring, and we're playing catch up, but I think pretty quickly with where they are. There are others like Boston Medical Center that have done renewable energy deals that directly impact their communities. For example, if you look at Boston Medical Center's work around their clean energy prescription, they're using solar arrays on their corporate office to create power credits that they then prescribe to people who are screening unstable for their ability to pay their utility bills. Okay. So they're producing the electricity, they get credit for it with the utility, and then when a patient comes in with an inability to pay their utility bill, they're then prescribing those credits to that person as a bill credit. So they can give $50 a month to Mrs. Jones as a way to help stabilize her financial situation and improve her health through that process. That is mind-numbingly creative. And I think those are the kinds of people and implementation that I'm trying to find. How do we make this work connect even more deeply with our communities than just us cleaning up our own emissions? When we look outside of our industry, I recently did a panel with Justin Keeble at Google Cloud. Okay. You can see what the tech industry is doing around sourcing new power with maybe restarting some nuclear facilities. And I did another panel during Climate Week with Amelia DeLuca, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Delta. The creativity of CSOs and their teams to find new ways to do their work, I think is some of the most inspiring people in work that we're involved with right now. So to me, it's a little less around which health system is farther along on our health system metrics, and more about how do I find the most creative people that are working in an environmental space and borrow and learn from them ways to bring that back to our industry and make ourselves better.
I love that. You mentioned nuclear. I'm co-chair of the ACEC Energy Committee. And last September, we met with a representative of Idaho National Labs. And he was talking to us about the progress they're making on small modular nuclear reactors. And then last week, I saw the University of Michigan published research, which shows that SMRs are economically viable and poised to start living up to the potential by 2050. Now, that's still 25 years away, but do you think SMRs could ever be a solution for large hospitals or hospital organizations such as yourself?
Yeah, I certainly cannot speak up authoritatively on the topic. I've done a medium amount of reading about the variety of new reactor types and how do we prevent any of the tragedies that have happened in the past from the older technologies that are there. if I put that aside, the massive acceleration in technology and learning that we're seeing being driven by AI and machine learning techniques, I'd have to imagine that the timeline actually gets shorter. You know, humans are incredibly crafty. It's what distinguishes our species. And I don't think that we entirely tech our way out of this problem.
Yeah.
I think there are things that we need to do to change behavior, but creativity and ingenuity are going to go a long ways. And so that would make me guess that SMRs do have a good role to play, hopefully sooner rather than later.
I've been watching about with Microsoft and Bill Gates and what they are doing with Constellation Energy to purchase electricity from the restarted 3 Mile Island. One of the things we're doing with this committee I'm on is we're having a webinar and inviting someone from the Nuclear Energy Institute as well as from 2 of the major SMR and technologies to come and do a webinar for us, a panel for us. So it seems like there are so many things that people are becoming creative about. And I agree with you. I look forward to seeing what happens. Several years ago, we did a project, and it was for the VA. A little bit unusual. They had hired us to come in and do commissioning on central energy plants that they had at multiple facilities. And this went from Togus, Maine to Loma Linda, California. And the central energy plants were powered by biomass. They were powered by landfill gas and fuel cells. The one in Loma Linda was fuel cell, and that caught my attention. Has Advent Health ever looked at anything like fuel cells for powering one of your hospitals?
We haven't done that yet, but it is on the roadmap for us to look at in the future.
I'm seeing so many different things that are going on. It's just, you were talking about how creative we are. And I agree. And I love seeing that. I'm learning so much more about it. You know, I went back and I looked at a lot of your interviews and what you had done. I loved hearing what you were talking about at the Wall Street Journal's discussion on Climate Week. The topic, I think, was going on the offense through sustainability, which I love. We're developing these same kinds of master plans for a wide variety of airports like JFK, Orlando, Raleigh, working here locally with universities like Valencia, like University of Central Florida, working with all these others. And there seem to be so many ways to do things. But last week I was meeting with a large not-for-profit hospital, and I was talking to them about some of these same topics you and I were talking about today. And they said, Bill, all that's great, but how do they fund it? And I was able to respond for airports. And I talked about some of the FAA programs, the education, some of the funding they get. But I was stymied when it came to funding for hospitals and not-for-profits. Do you have any suggestions that I can go back to them and say, have you thought about or advise them on how to proceed with getting funding for these types of sustainability projects?
Yeah, I think when you bring up the term funding, to me, there's 2 concepts. One is, what is the financial return, right? And then the second one is, where are you going to get the cash? And where you're going to get the cash is clearly different for different organizations.
Yeah.
We're a AA rated organization. And so our ability to get our hands on cash is pretty easy. And that's going to be different for different size and different credit quality organizations. So we'll set that one aside for a second. The second part of it is, you know, where am I going to find the elements that have good financial viability? So assuming I can get the cash, where would I go? To me, I think the starting one were these renewable power purchase agreements that we've done, because these are a zero upfront cash. They don't require you to make an investment or to buy capital or to put capital in place. It's really to say, look, I have this balance sheet. I want these renewable credits. How can we make an arrangement where I can swap my dirty power for clean power? And yes, I'm going to have some cash flows that are moving in and out of the organization, but there's no big upfront cash payment, right? For us, over the first year, that's going to have a negative cash impact. But over the future years, as electricity prices continue to increase, that'll be a net positive cash flow. So that'll be a cash generating investment. And then you have, from your world around energy efficiency and central energy plants and all of that, many of those kinds of projects, while they do require some financing, and firms like yours can bring creative financing to that, many of those have high ROI or internal rates of return type of payouts to them. So they're very attractive from that standpoint. And so you work down that daisy chain of how do I start from like no upfront cash with future cash flow to things that might need some creative financing that have high ROIs to things that are going to be important, like our solar array here. For us, it's about a $13 million gross CapEx, but we'll get about $4 million of that back. We still think that the ROI on the project is probably in the 8 to 10% range. So, like not off the charts amazing, but still a good positive return. But even though it's lower in the daisy chain, the impact of being able to see that to our employees and all of our leadership that comes to the corporate office is, you can't buy that really in any other way. And at the end of the day, there will be some projects that you'll need to do that won't have those kinds of payoffs. And so it's really kind of this layer cake of saying, let's set the cash aside for a second. How do you set up projects that create that positive momentum? If you start on the wrong end of it, then it looks like you're always going to have your hand out trying to find a couple of dollars to do the next thing. But if you start at the right level of it, you create that positive momentum, that flywheel starts moving in your favor.
This has been fascinating. Thank you so very much. We'll continue this conversation next month with much, much more. And we hope you'll come back and join us as listeners to find out more about what Rob and his team and everyone at Advent Health is doing.